The steady beep of the heart monitor was supposed to be the most stressful part of my afternoon appointment. I sat alone inside the quiet examination room while waiting for the specialist to review my routine tests. My gaze wandered aimlessly across the polished mahogany desk and landed on a silver picture frame tucked near the computer monitor. The image inside that frame instantly paralyzed my lungs and made my blood completely freeze. A beautiful woman smiled back at me from the glossy photograph while wearing a familiar navy blue silk dress. The lighting caught the delicate fabric exactly the way I remembered from just a few days prior. The heavy wooden door suddenly creaked open and the doctor stepped into the room with a cheerful grin. He noticed my intense stare and happily announced that the stunning woman was his brand new fiancée. He proudly explained that they had just celebrated their engagement over the previous weekend during a romantic coastal getaway. My entire reality collapsed under the weight of his joyful words because the woman smiling in that photograph was not a stranger. She was my wife of 8 years who was known to the entire world as Valerie. I stared at the photo while a sick feeling of dread violently twisted inside my stomach. I vividly remembered the specific morning. She wore that luxurious garment before leaving our quiet suburban home. I had personally stood behind her in our bedroom and carefully pulled the zipper up the back of that exact navy blue silk dress. She had playfully kissed me on the cheek while smelling of expensive perfume and said she was meeting friends for afternoon tea. The sickening magnitude of her deception became completely undeniable. My mind raced back through nearly a decade of shared holidays and domestic routines that we had built together. Valerie always seemed like the perfect partner who showered me with endless affection and absolute dedication. I believed we shared an unbreakable bond built on mutual respect and unwavering honesty through every season of life. Now I was discovering that my devoted spouse was preparing to marry another man entirely. The doctor continued talking about their future wedding plans while checking my blood pressure and casually reviewing my medical chart. I forced myself to nod along and calmly asked him what the name of his lovely bride might be. He warmly replied that her name was Serena and mentioned she traveled frequently for her demanding corporate job. The puzzle pieces violently slammed together as I recalled the endless business trips my wife scheduled. I sat perfectly still on the examination table while gathering every detail the oblivious man volunteered about his relationship. He described her favorite restaurants and hobbies, which were identical to the preferences of the woman sharing my bed. I politely smiled and thanked him for the medical consultation before rushing out of the sterile building. I gripped the steering wheel of my sedan and gasped for air while processing the absolute destruction of my universe. I drove toward our neighborhood with a terrifying calmness washing over my senses and hardening my resolve to uncover everything. I entered our silent house and marched directly into her spacious walk-in closet to begin my desperate search. I pushed aside rows of designer jackets until my fingers brushed against the smooth fabric of that infamous navy blue garment. The dress hung there like a mocking trophy representing the ultimate betrayal of my loyalty. I tore through her vanity drawers and uncovered a hidden compartment containing a secondary cellular device powered off and securely hidden. I plugged the black rectangle into a wall charger and watched as a flood of romantic messages illuminated the glowing screen. The notifications were filled with wedding vendor appointments and affectionate texts from the cardiologist I had just visited. My heart shattered into a million jagged pieces upon seeing the undeniable written confirmation. I spent the next 3 hours systematically printing bank statements and photographing the damning evidence displayed on the hidden screen. I arranged the financial documents and the glowing device in a neat row across our polished granite kitchen island. I poured myself a tall glass of cold water and waited in the fading evening shadows for my deceitful partner to arrive. The sound of her vehicle pulling into the driveway signaled the final showdown. Valerie unlocked the front door and strolled into the foyer with a radiant smile stretched across her beautiful face. She tossed her leather handbag onto the couch and casually asked how my afternoon medical appointment had gone. I remained perfectly silent while gesturing calmly toward the neatly organized collection of absolute destruction resting on the kitchen counter. Her cheerful expression melted into a mask of pure terror the second her eyes registered the proof. She stood completely frozen in the center of the room while the heavy silence suffocated the air between us. I told her that my heart was functioning perfectly, but I had learned some fascinating information about a woman named Serena. The color drained entirely from her cheeks as she stumbled backward and desperately grabbed the edge of the sofa for balance. She tried to stammer out a pathetic excuse, but her trembling voice failed completely. I calmly instructed her to pack a bag and leave the property before the sun disappeared below the horizon entirely. She collapsed onto the hardwood floor and began sobbing wildly while begging for a chance to explain her complicated emotional struggles. I simply turned my back and stared out the large living room window until she finally realized her manipulation tactics were useless. The sound of her dragging a heavy suitcase marked the end. The following morning, I contacted a ruthless divorce attorney to initiate the legal dissolution of our heavily fractured and fraudulent partnership. I also made sure to contact the cardiologist to expose the true identity of his wonderful new fiancée. He deserved to know the crushing truth before he legally tied his entire life to a professional and seasoned liar. The entire ordeal tested my sanity and forced me to rebuild my shattered identity completely. Healing from such an extreme emotional violation required countless hours of self-reflection and quiet acceptance of my new reality. The devastating chapter taught me that you can share a home with someone and never truly know the darkness within their soul. True freedom comes from facing brutal facts head-on rather than remaining comfortably blind to the deception hiding in plain sight. I survived the ultimate betrayal and emerged much stronger than I ever expected.